We're starting today's adventure in the green pastures of downtown Vancouver, Canada. This is Granville Street. And one of my favorite features of Granville Street is the BC Entertainment Walk of Fame, where superstars are immortalized on the sidewalk. In recent vlogs, I've featured some of the big names on the walk here, like Michael J. Fox, Chief Dan George, and Bryan Adams. Well, today we're going to meet one of these big names in person. We're going to head over to North Vancouver and Carisbrook Park to meet the one and only James E. Hibbard. All right, I'm here with the legendary Vancouver performer, James E. Hibbard. Thank you very much for joining us, James.
My pleasure, absolutely. Thank you for asking.
The first thing I'd like to know is when and where did you first start dancing?
Oh, when I was 8 years old in Boise, Idaho, my mother used to take my brother and I to see movie musicals. She was fond of them, and I've traced and I know the film that inspired me to dance, and it's called It's Always Fair Weather, and it starred Gene Kelly, Michael Kidd, and Dan Daly. And that's watching them dance inspired me to dance. And my mother said when we came out of the theater, I tried to dance down the street.
Now, Jim, I understand as you went through your career, eventually you would get to work with the one and only Elvis Presley. How did that come about?
Geez, well, the first film, I've done 6 Elvis Presley films. All the 6 films I did with Elvis were in the years late 1964 to 1967. These films are so important to me in my memory because I actually got to know Elvis, and it was a funny thing that happened on the set one day. We're just talking on a break, and Elvis was sitting with his guys, with Red West and Joe Esposito, and I was with the dancer and we're talking, and I mentioned that I grew up in the woods of Idaho, and my dad was a logger, and I hunted and fished every day of my life. Well, this twigged something in Elvis, and he asked me, he said, on our next break, would you like to come to my trailer and we can have a conversation? And so that started every film I worked with Elvis. He called me over to his trailer and we talked. And we just talked about what he wanted to talk about was when times were simpler. He didn't want to talk about show business or any of that stuff. He talked about his mom growing up, and without any pressure. He was very relaxed. He was super polite all the time, and very concerned that I was comfortable. And I remember one day, this is on the film Easy Come, Easy Go, which was the last film. And he did this every time because the assistant director came and said, Mr. Presley, we're ready for you for the next shot, right? So Elvis would always say, Jimmy, have we finished our conversation? You know? And I would say, I think we better go. And he said, okay, let's go. And we go back, and by the time we got to the set, he was the persona of Elvis again, right? And he was, and I saw Joe Esposito, I mentioned his name, he was Elvis's road manager, and he was just brilliant and loved Elvis. Joe said it was an absolute rarity that Elvis ever reached out to anybody like that on a personal level, and he thought it was just amazing, right? And it was for me, it's one of my most cherished moments, you know, that Elvis and I were friends for a time in our lives.
And Jim, you said that Elvis was very proficient at karate.
Yeah, he was a third-degree black belt. He was really fast, and one of his guys in his entourage, his name is Red West, who also acted in many of his films as well. They would put the demonstrations on for us. Elvis was always the victim, and Red West would attack him, and Elvis would beat him into submission, right? And it was lightning fast. It was just entertainment plus.
And James, do you remember the last time that you ever saw Elvis?
Yes, I do. when I finished Easy Come, Easy Go, which is the last film I did with Elvis, Joe Esposito and Elvis invited me to come to the taping of his comeback special, which is spectacular. And I was literally maybe 15 feet away from Elvis and his band on that little stage, and I got to see his show. And afterwards, he said how much he enjoyed our chats, and he wished me well. And that was the last time I saw him. Was then, but it was amazing, right? To get an invitation from Elvis. And I got to tell you, I had a chance to choreograph him in one number in the movie Easy Come, Easy Go, because David Winters was the choreographer, but David had to go at something come up, a family emergency. So David asked me to choreograph this last number. It was a big production number, setting this picnic table and chairs and places were flying and stuff. And with Elvis, you don't really choreograph him. You tell him where you want him to be at a certain time. You may give him a move, like something, but that's it. But Elvis was Elvis, and he moved the way he moved, and you basically said, "I want you there this time and over there at that time," and he would do anything you asked, and but you wouldn't choreograph him like dance steps, because he knew he'd look silly, right? So he just did Elvis.
I wanted to ask you about some local history that's fascinated me, and it's not very well documented, and that's the Tom Jones show. I understand you worked on that.
Well, I did, yes. I choreographed it. I choreographed the series. It was in Panorama Studios in West Van up on the hill. It was exciting. And Tom is a lot like Elvis in terms of energy. I mean, just explosive energy. And he was like Elvis. He was a guy, approachable. You could talk to him. What Tom Jones wanted to do, he was most comfortable smoking a cigar, drinking champagne, and telling jokes. He was a down to earth, really good guy, and I just had a great time with him.
And did you ever mention to Tom that you had been buddies with Elvis?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. He's a huge fan of Elvis Presley.
You've worked on over 150 shows here in Vancouver, but I understand you've got a different project coming up. Tell us about that, please.
Yeah, this is probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. About 5 years ago, my dancer friends that I worked with in several films in LA encouraged me to write my own story, my book. I've written it chronologically, starting when I was 8 years old, up to now, and it's the process is extensive. But I have a publisher out of Pensacola, Florida. It's called Bear Manor Media. On Facebook and on the internet, there's several groups that honor different stars, like Anne Margaret that I worked with, and Elvis and Barbra Streisand, and all the people I've worked with, and they're big fans, and they're also big fans of my work in those films. And I never knew these people existed, but now we're in constant communication, and I've got this whole bunch of people that are looking forward to my book, which is really great,
And what's the title of the upcoming book?
Can't Stop Dancing, and that's the truth.
We'll wrap it up here at Vancouver's Empire Field, the site of Elvis's 1957 concert. Special thanks to James Hibbard today. I hope to join him again when his autobiography is published. Thank you for watching. I'm Jean-Claude Vancouver, and until next time, be good to the other.
I love dancing. I love dancers. The dancer's heart is unlike anyone, and basically we are one, the dancers and me.